everyone, this is Sofia Smallstorm, and I am back on one of my podcasts. This is the third for the month of August. Usually I try to do 2 a month, but I have a very amazing guest here, Professor Darrell Hamamoto. He is at UC Davis, and although he's in the Asian American Studies Department, his real focus is media, pop culture, sexuality, cultural analysis, and I think a lot of other things. This is a very fascinating, entertaining human being who will enlarge your understanding of how this country works, and possibly a lot more. So I welcome you, Darrell, to my little show.
Thank you, Sophia, for the introduction and the invitation. Thank you very much.
Well, I really am so happy that I was able to get in touch with you and you wanted or agreed to do this show. I heard you first on Red Ice, which is one of my favorite networks, and I was just amazed by your spontaneity, your entertaining capacity with this depth and insight, and you knew all about what I call the post-human world, the culture that is being slowly and methodically created, that is less and less, I guess you could say, comfortable for natural humanity. And that's where I kind of want to go in this discussion. So,
well, I'm glad that you considered me to be entertaining, because there are a lot of people close to me professionally, my coworkers, the administration, don't find me amusing at all. They are very threatened by what I have to say. So I guess what that means is that we have a level of understanding.
Right. I mean, you're a thorn in their side. And
apparently so.
You can tell us why. Would you like to?
Certainly, but I'll just state up front, I feel very good today because I just had a short phone call with a human rights attorney. He works on a global level, and we're looking towards trying to rectify my situation at UC Davis. It's gotten way out of control, and the people who have been trying to suppress me and my ideas by antagonizing me for what I have to say about human sexuality, which is at bottom the eugenics program that's been in the offing for the past century or so, which is executed, by the way, and I mean that in the fullest sense of the word, at research institutions like the University of California, Davis. So it's pretty serious business. I am entertaining, but I'm also as serious as a heart attack.
Well, that goes without saying. Serious people can be, of course, tedious to listen to, but you aren't, and that's really what I meant.
Oh, certainly, and I go off of Oscar Wilde's observation that if you're going to tell people the truth, you better make them laugh, otherwise they're going to kill you. And Oscar Wilde was a person who was defiantly open, homosexual, I guess the term was back then, at a time when it really meant something, unlike today when the whole concept has been trivialized and weaponized and turned against the very communities it purports to represent. He spent 2 years in prison and never fully recovered his health for it. So I used that epigram that he put together and took it to heart and use it as part of my own method in getting my message across. And I enjoy it. I'm naturally a very easygoing, funny, I guess if you could call it that, individual. I'm easily amused at all kinds of human foibles, including my own.
Well, let me ask you this. First of all, wasn't Oscar Wilde in the Fabian Society?
He might have been. There were any numbers of elite intellectuals that were Fabians, and if I could make it a little bit more complex, as opposed to how people in the so-called conspiracy make it out to be. A lot of them were in it because they're anti-monarchy. They were members as a way to erode the foundations of hereditary authority. So it's much more complex than just trying to secretly overtake society through stealth, through the wolf in sheep's clothing method. So yeah, most thinking people, or many thinking people, were involved.
I see. Okay, so what is weaponized homosexuality as opposed to natural homosexuality?
Well, what the biologists tell us is that in any given human population, there's a certain percentage of people who are so-called homosexual, and most of your audience knows that even that term is subject to contestation. It's a relatively recent term. Most societies didn't make a distinction, but in any given population, there's certain percentage of people who are desirous of people of the same gender as themselves. The weaponized part comes in two forms. One is quite literally, and that includes the so-called AIDS crisis of late 70s and 80s, where literally certain viruses were weaponized and beta tested on certain quote-unquote undesirable populations, which happen to be gay and typically non-white gay populations, including African American. So there's that form of weaponization. And then there's the larger social and cultural weaponization, which is to erode some of the more steady and time-worn, enduring institutions in all of human society, universally. And for the sake of convenience, I'll call it the family, and I'll call it the male-female relationships and parent and child relationships.
So the family and male-female relationships would then create the strongest infrastructure of society, right?
It's worked for millennia, and why all of a sudden is it so urgent for us to go past gender? Why is it so urgent that we have to turn our backs on this institution that has served universally so many cultures and societies and civilizations so well? Now, I'm not trying to romanticize or idealize these institutions. They are human institutions, and by definition, they are imperfect. But the real agenda is to make the state, the centralized authority, Big Brother, whatever term you want to use, as your surrogate family. And that's how they will control you. That's how they'll control us. So we want to make sure that there is a great deal of autonomy that families and individuals can exercise.
We want to make sure, who's we?
We, the average everyday people who are slowly being engineered into either out of existence or into gross conformity to this new regime, this new vision.
So is it fair to call the new vision the post-human society?
That's a good shorthand for it, yes. Transhumanist, post-human, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So that's how I refer to it. And
okay.
I say that as transhumans, we're in the corridor of change.
Yes.
So trans means across. So we are crossing over. And it's through us and within us and from us that the change is being manufactured and affected.
Mm-hmm. And post-humanism is the destination.
Right.
Yeah.
So post-human implies that at some point in the future we will not be human, because post means after.
Correct.
So what will we be?
We'll be a memory, literally, a consciousness that has been downloaded into mechanized super computers. And that's already being previewed for us right in front of our face. I recently viewed, I think it's about a almost not quite 2-hour long feature film starring Johnny Depp, who has been featured in a number of occult-themed type films. He starred in a film called Transcendence. Have you seen that?
No.
Okay, that's just co-starring Morgan Freeman, and he's typecast. He's the older, spiritual and aware, heroic African-American male. And he comes out okay. And then most of the cast are just these people who you might think you recognize them, but they're unknown. They're sort of like crisis actors. They kind of look familiar, but they're not really. So it's Johnny Depp, and what happens is that he's a artificial intelligence researcher at a University of California, Berkeley type of laboratory, and because he's shot by a eco-terrorist, a deep ecologist type person with a polonium type weapon, Litvinenko was shot by one in London by agents unknown, and he died very rapidly of, I think, radiation poisoning. So it's that scenario there. And in order to salvage all these years of research, he has to offload his memory and his consciousness into these supercomputers. So yeah, this is what they're doing to popular culture. They're giving us a preview of upcoming attractions, which happens to be the movie itself.
Okay, so I just have to ask you, Johnny Depp plays an African American?
No, Morgan Freeman is the African American. He's the African American sage that has to be a part of every movie these days for demographic purposes, I guess. Oh, yeah, there's also, I'm Asian American. There's also some hints of Wen-Ho Lee, Lawrence Livermore type infiltration by Asian scientists who are going to be probably blamed for it for infiltrators. And really it's going to be some sort of government entities behind it that are doing this. But they have to scapegoat it on a racial basis.
And that's all in the movie Transcendence?
Yes.
But is that something that a person like you would get out of it? What does the average person get out of that movie?
That I can't tell you. I'm giving you my analysis. I've read some of the comments on Netflix, and they've been almost all good. There's lots of comments. I didn't read all of them, but most of them are quite flattering. I think they seem to like the idea of downloading their consciousness, their memory, and their free will to a supercomputer. But
then what happens to the human form? And that's
I guess they haven't thought it out that far enough. They're so alienated from their own bodies and their own minds and their own lives that it doesn't really matter. I mean, I have a friend who's lost in this software game called Second Life. It's called Second Life, and there's hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people worldwide who are spending a good deal of their RL, as it's called, real life, in 2L, which is Second Life. And that software company, I forgot the name of it, but it's based in San Francisco. A lot of these outfits and the R&D comes right out of the Pentagon-funded Silicon Valley corridor.
Wow.
So that's already happening, yeah.
I'm writing notes, frantically writing notes. This is very interesting.
Well, for any researchers out there, I'm giving you a lot of topics to go off and do your own work, and that's one of the main reasons I'm on here is to bring us kind of up to speed, because within this community of research, we're talking about, in many cases, topics that are like 70 or 80 years old, So this is 2014. We can go round and round and talking about the Fabian Society and all the baleful influence that they've had on intellectual life, but those people are dead and gone. Their influences are here. I'm more interested in what's right around the corner from us. So, yeah.
No, I understand that. So 2L is shorthand for Second Life.
Correct.
And Second Life is defined as?
It's a virtual world. It's an exchange, economic exchange. It's heavily loaded with sex. There's different rooms. You have an avatar. You might have seen the movie Avatar a few years ago, right?
Yes.
James Cameron. Yeah, they have avatars on there, and you can pick whatever desirable features you like. If you're a man, you can be a woman. Or vice versa. It's your world. And there are people there who buy and sell real estate. They are at 2L, Second Life. They are multimillionaires. In RLs, they're nothing but losers who have a good internet connection and an iMac and a lot of time on their hands.
So, is it fair to say that the dating, Match.com and eHarmony, these are transitions into 2L?
Match.com and all that is for old people who don't know about Second Life. I mean, I don't want to be ageist or anything, because I fit in that category myself. But those are for people who are still locked into websites and such. This is a totally different ballgame qualitative.
Let me tell you what I know from people who have been doing dating on Match.com.
Please, I'm really...
Okay, so they're not old, these people. Some of them are...
they're not?
No, some of them are younger. I mean, let's just say they're not in their 20s. They're maybe in their 30s, 40s, 50s. But they're not like 60. They're still viable. And they are horrified to find that the pictures posted by the people they're interested in on Match.com are not real pictures. And another guy told me that no woman that he's met on Match.com or that kind of website really ever wants to get together. They want to stay separated. They want to be connected only through the cyber world, and they want to chat and talk and whatever you want. They'll talk on the phone, but they will put off or cancel the date as long as they can and as much as they can, because they have created a fictional self.
Well, thank you. You've saved me $39.95. Whatever the
Sometimes
fee
it's
is.
free. But,
It's always free at first, right?
Right. But actually at first you have to, the only way to see who you're interested in, like see the men in your town, in your zip code, you've got to put together this enormous revealing personal profile. You can't.
Sure, the NSA loves it.
Oh, absolutely. And anyway, so that's the only way you can troll trawl is the word I want. Trawl the waters. If you provide all your information, and I was doing it the other day, and I just kept hitting next, and there was zero information that I was providing, but it was amazing to see how much they actually were trying to solicit from you. And you can get into the kind of flow of this. You answer one question, then there's another, and you find yourself thinking about it, and you give an answer, and then you give another answer to something else, and boom, there you are, and you're now in their clutches because you've actually typed everything in. So, So
the trawler has been the trawled.
Right, exactly. So
I have a alliterative Joycean phrase for you. Trawling for trolls. How's that?
Yeah, you can do that.
No, tell me more. This is fascinating, and you're saving me tons of money. Not that I've even remotely been interested in doing that. I like to do the conventional way, just sort of meet people in RL.
Well,
randomly.
As I perceive it, there are two levels to this. There's the website, Match.com, Plenty of Fish. There's another one where I think you get to choose who you're interested in. You look through a bunch of, pictures and names, and then you contact people.
Isn't there this site for nasty women who want affairs, or just sort of like raw sex? I forgot what it's called.
I don't know about that, but let me just go finish with this. And then there's eHarmony. And eHarmony selects for you. So eHarmony analyzes the data that you put in, and eHarmony finds you people that it or they think you're going to like. So that's one step up. That's the state choosing for you. And I found that rather interesting. But anyway, my friend who constantly is on these websites, he's been complaining for years and years and years. And
well, he must like it.
Well, because of his research into alternative information, he has become kind of a hermit.
I see.
A part of it is the addiction to constantly ferreting out more and more and more, and then you find yourself estranged from other people because you're not thinking like they're thinking. It shifts you. It shifts your consciousness. It shifts your behavior. It creates a new person out of you to quote-unquote wake up. So then you can't just mix and mingle with people. You can't have small talk easily. If you want to be partnered with somebody, you're hard-pressed to find someone who knows as much as you do or isn't going to run in the other direction. And
so you're telling me that it's becoming even more difficult than it already was naturally.
Oh, yeah.
Before the advent of Match.com or eHarmony.
Oh, yeah. The way I look at it is in the form of a pyramid, which may be That's the Illuminati's favorite structure, but
So I've heard.
with the eye on the top. But if you are a garden variety human being, you're on the lower levels of the pyramid, and the more you become specialized in your preferences, the higher you get. So let's say you're an athletic garden variety human being. So then you're one level up on the pyramid. And so then you really only want to meet others who are athletic, because the more you share your interests, the less friction you're going to have. So let's say you're an athletic vegetarian. Okay, so now you're on a higher level of the pyramid. You don't want to be going out with a meat eater. I'm just using very sort of superficial examples, but they're pertinent. So if you become a conspiracy theorist or skeptic or deep researcher, you just go higher and higher and higher on the pyramid.
You know what? You just given me an idea for a specialized dating service site. It's going to be restricted to people who are into conspiranoia, and we'll call it edisharmony.com.
Well, you can do it. It's a lot of work.
Okay, great.
I know someone who started such a website.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she put a lot of money into it, and she was specializing. I was giving her some suggestions. I said, you've got to, make these subcategories: 9/11, chemtrails, vaccines. I mean, some people are into all kinds of things, but other people are more into one thing than another, and they want to find a person who really cares about chemtrails, right? So anyway, it does become harder and harder to find compatibility with people who are awake. In fact, I created a poll on my 911 website, which I think can still be accessed. I have to see how I can reactivate it if it isn't accessible right now. But it was about your social life as a 9/11 skeptic. And you would not believe how many people answered in this really tragic, dismal way that they had given up all contact with others in terms of being social or trying to date, and they had become completely reclusive because they were just... You know what?
Yeah. That makes me very sad, and if that is true, then the terrorists have won.
They've won?
They won. If they have reduced people to such dire straits, to such a low level of emotional existence, and then the terrorists have won. This is really the fallout of 9/11. So the government has been a success. That's who I'm referring to.
Oh, yeah.
Dark forces.
No, I mean...
They've accomplished their goal. Everybody's dispirited and alienated.
Well, yeah. I mean, I know people who are otherwise very social, who have nowhere to practice or engage in being social, because they are completely alone in their beliefs, and going to a party only creates problems. You can only drink so much. You can only talk to people for so long about stupidities. And if you try to share any information that you have, you're going to be ostracized.
Oh, yeah.
And that's not what you want at a party, So,
that's true, yeah. Especially if it's like a professional gathering and you start talking about nanothermite or something.
Well, I mean, I think nanothermite is questionable.
I'm just using that as an example. Yes, how about directed energy weapons? Is that better?
I think it's also questionable. Oh my God, I'm gonna get.
How about black magic? Is that okay?
About what?
Black magic.
I think it's questionable. You see how high up I went on the pyramid already? There's like nobody else there.
You can go so high that you wind up where you started out from.
Well,
to comment on your question, I mean, if it's going to be that difficult for people to be involved at this level, I don't think it's worth it. Yeah.
Well,
it's not a necessary. I think these people already had the grain of isolation and alienation already there, and they're using 9/11 as an excuse to it's almost like a moral high ground that they can take. So, well, yeah, no one understands me because I have the truth.
I don't think it's so much about the truth. It's about finding your family, finding your tribe, finding the people who are like you. And, most of our relationships now, once we wake up, our relationships become more and more geographically distant. because there aren't that many people in our immediate surroundings who know what we know, and most people, as you know, resist that kind of knowledge. So you'll find people on the internet, or you'll be referred to people through a network of friends, but you'll be very far away. And this has been my experience, quite honestly, that there are very few people who live in my town, city, who want to spend physical time with me, because it's too jarring, it's too discomforting to talk to me.
Were you sociable and a well-met, hail fellow guest party beforehand, or were you more keep to yourself, not very sociable type person?
Well,
did the 9/11, did that all of a sudden change your party habits, or?
I was always different, and I was never one of the crowd, but I had more of a passport than I had when I woke up to 9/11. Then things changed in an extreme way.
I see.
My relationships came mainly through the cyber world, emails. I mean, I have any number of people I can call up at any time and chat with and have a great conversation. But I can't spend physical time with them because they're very far away. So anyway, I wanted to get more into this subject of sexuality and pop culture with you. If you're willing to go there.
Oh, absolutely. Ask me anything.
So, I know you are at UC Davis, and I know on the interview with Red Ice, you were talking a lot about the lesbian, gay, transgender, bisexual. I don't know what order the letters go in. LGBT, is that what it is?
GLBT, and it keeps getting longer.
Why? What's being added to it now?
Who knows? I can't keep up with it. You should put GLBT ...
So, these are subgroups of general people, right?
Correct. They've self-identified as I'm this, I'm that, or the other.
And what is happening on the campus with these groups? Can you tell us?
Their identities have been hijacked by the Student Services Department, and they've been being used as, they're being built as a managerial disciplinary surveillance block against the rest of the population. And this is how they'll begin to feel good about themselves. So they're investing heavily in student services. They're divesting from the academic end. There's only 25% full-time tenure track professors at the University of California. 75% of them are part-timers or lecturers. I don't know if your audience knows that, but that's incredible professional fraud. You know, what if 25% of the medical profession were MDs, and the rest of them were nurse practitioners or something, or full-timers? That would be a scandal. But for some reason, So anyway, the point is that instead of educating these people, they're being used as future administrators for this
agenda.
Their tool, the GLBT agenda, is a transition, which you call a corridor, to this larger post-humanist world. And plus, it's also convenient that they're not going to really overpopulate, I mean that ironically, world, and not going to have to deal with family issues. They'll just have to deal with identity politics. And the way it manifested a couple of years ago, I gave a talk at the University of Texas, Austin, in the Lady Bird Johnson room, and I gave a talk about hepatitis B vaccines, and in order to do that, I had to talk about the earlier fake vaccine crisis based around AIDS. And there's one guy who was a GLBT activist. He started crying. He started yelling at me. He just started really acting out. And I got run out of UCLA in 1992, I think it was, because some GLBT activists didn't like me talking about Peter Duesberg's research, or other people who weren't going along with the orthodoxy. And all these people, by the way, have been vindicated. So that's what I'm really dealing with, and that's one of the reasons why I started teaching my own courses in sexuality, because the dialogue, the subject, the research was hijacked, monopolized, and claimed by a very, very small segment of the population, and most of it was built upon fraudulent science. funded by Big Pharma, Department of Defense, National Institute of Health, you name the usual suspects. And if you want to turn over the biggest rock of all, you'll find a Rockefeller.
Okay, I want to back up a little bit.
Okay.
I thought that you call it GLBT. I've heard it as it starts with L, but whatever it is, that four-letter acronym. I thought it referred to more of a student, a definition of student, of people types among the student body.
It's a typology, but there's a politics behind it.
So
it's been weaponized. The identity part of it is there, but the identity has been weaponized. Cynically. Okay,
but how do the part-time faculty play into this?
Well, I just use that as an example of the university not really being committed to education anymore, and committed towards just playtime and identity politics. In other words, they're taking the money that they could have spent on faculty and academic research priorities, but instead they're shifting all that money into catering to the various groups of whatever initials, and running it through student services and hiring a vice provost in that area, shifting priorities, because really there are very few jobs to be had right now. So, make these people feel good while they're in school, so they really don't look around to see what's really going on. And this is what's getting me in trouble. I'm saying, hey, listen, you're being played, just like, every other group. And I say, no, I'm going to get a job being an advocate for the people.
I noticed when I got to be a teenager that college, as regarded by Americans, was a kind of final playground. It wasn't so much that you went to college to specialize in some kind of studies, but you went there as a finishing experiment in your growth path.
Yeah.
And I didn't really know. I went to an Ivy League school, and I was kind of horrified when I got there at how busy it was and how much information was slammed at us in every course, and I really wasn't given the chance to absorb anything the way I wanted to. It was just, we had to read so much, we had to write so much, it wasn't about regurgitation, it was about absorbing and expressing, but at this absolute rapid speed, and it was unnatural and it wasn't beneficial.
Yeah.
And I couldn't wait to get out of there because I wasn't really enjoying the learning experience the way they were doing it. But what I was enjoying was the student experience. There were amazing, fascinating people there, but not on a recreational level. It was that people were so interesting. They were so smart. It was such a pleasure to be around them.
And they're all in one place, physically.
Yeah. We're stuck there. Nobody left the campus for any real reason.
Yeah.
There's
something to be said for that, especially 30 or 40 years ago, but we're in a much different world now, and most of my students are first generation, immigrant or refugee people. They need a job. They don't really have time to hang out. The people that you're dealing with probably a lot of them come from hereditary wealth. They have something that they can move into, but my students are, they might have to be the number one provider for their extended families. And that makes it a double, and I think that's one of the reasons, really, why they're being diverted into really non-productive types of activity. They should really be studying about how the economy really works, how the society works, how the culture is engineered, instead of getting in touch with their GLBT selves, whatever it is. But that's what they're selling them, and they're paying a lot of money for that these days.
So that's actually in the curriculum?
There's a curriculum on the syllabus, and then there's a hidden curriculum. Just like there's an agenda and there's a hidden agenda. So I'm giving you the real curriculum here, the underlying curriculum.
So I guess what are your courses? You're teaching sexuality, but you're teaching the reality of sexuality?
I'm talking about eugenic sciences, and this is a course called Asian American Sexuality. and how Asians, even back in Asia, were used as sort of like the beta test subjects for some pharmaceutical experiments. The U.S. public health system, for example, was beta tested in the Philippines first with ringworms and whatnot. And a lot of the vaccines, to this very day, they've offshored them. They're being tested in India or China, pharmaceutical testing. A lot of radiological experimentation were done on Asian people, like the people of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and now the people of Fukushima and the west coast of the U.S., on and on and on. And that's not what they were hoping for. They were thought I was going to teach something about interracial dating. You know, like, oh, my parents don't want to let me date a non-Vietnamese American boy, and I really like them because they're on TV and movies. And I said, no, you can figure that out on your own. I really want to go much deeper than that. And this information has gotten back to the administration. The administration says, wow, this is where we get all our money, from these very entities that this guy is critiquing. And we want to get these really dumb, stupid, ambitious Asian American refugee and immigrant children to work for Big Pharma. We want them to become the new intellectual coolie labor for the pharmaceutical complex. We want them to go work for the HMOs and become medical doctors so they can dispense psychotropic drugs to the world. By the way, that's the topic of my new book, Servitors of Empire.
Yeah. So I want you to tell us about your book, but first I have to ask you a question. Sure. Is it that the imported peoples are so anxious to become part of the American society that they won't be as discerning, or they'll be more hasty or more enthusiastic to get this job and do what is required of them?
Mm-hmm. They're not going to ask any questions. And I think the people who are in control of immigration policy are quite aware of that. There's a certain social psychology of immigrant and refugee people where they're not going to really, they're so grateful to be here,
right.
Especially since a lot of them do come from authoritarian and totalitarian systems like China. And what they're assuming that the United States is not behind the creation of global totalitarianism, and they're now living in the belly of the beast. They don't want to hear that. They've come at great cost to their families, politically as well as financially, to make it here, and I'm telling them, sharing with them information, the insights that go completely counter to their expectations. These people are what they call aspirationals.
Yeah.
And what my department wants me to do is to pander and cater to their aspirational psychology so that they can be put into the system uncritically and unthinkingly, and so they can be exploited. And I said, no thanks, I'm not going to do it. I didn't sign up for that.
Well, I guess I'm still taking notes. There are certain things. I think that's fascinating, aspirationals and the aspirational psychology. Mm-hmm. Because I've seen that. You saw decades ago how hardworking the Koreans were who had the vegetable stands in New York City, and the people who had the gas stations from South Asia. But what you don't see, the Americans were and are jaded. They've either been here too long, but 200 years ago, it was that people power, the work ethic of the Irish and the Polish and all the people who had come from Europe. The immigrants who built the country into
and freed African Americans too. The African American middle class is really, really taking off during the 1950s, and I think that really bothered people like the Rockefellers.
So, who are the Rockefellers?
The Rockefellers are descended from some Dutch traders going back to from what we can tell in the genealogy, going back to the 17th. Century, and they're basically bankers. If you want to lift the rock up, most of these people come from finance families. I mean, I'm talking about big banks, big finance.
Right, and those are all Rothschild connected, right?
Not all of them. There's a family in China called the Li family, and the head of it is still alive. His name is Li Ka-shing. And his holdings are pretty broad-based. And at some level, I'm sure he deals with Rothschild interests or Rockefeller. In fact, Rockefellers were really, really big into China going back to the early part of the 20th century. I think one of their mottos for one of their companies, oil companies, was, lamps for or oil for the lamps of China. I think that was one of their standard oil deals, and they were selling kerosene there. And they saw the potential of China going back, decades and decades. So what we're seeing here is the transfer of middle-class wealth over to China, and then the rise of China that's been built up by the Rockefeller plan has been part of a decades-long process and grand plan. They like to move the chips around the table, just to move wealth here and there because it helps generate wealth for themselves and power.
Well, I heard that Rockefellers served the Rothschilds in America. By the way, is there a playground near you or something?
A playground? Yeah, you can hear that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I hear the children.
Yes, isn't that a nice sound?
It's a nice sound, but it's a little bit daunting because these are going to be the posthumans.
Well, they're playing, they're not indoors on video games. So
no, that's good. I'm glad.
I hear kids outside kicking soccer balls against my wall. I should go out there and yell at them. I said, no, I'm glad he's not watching MTV or BET. He's playing soccer. He's outdoors. So yeah, if you'd like, I'll shut the window.
No, I want you to be comfortable. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't something else that was like a NSA interference.
Oh no.
No, that's real. That's the real.
No, these are real children. Yeah, flesh and blood. There's a soccer field right outside my door here, my window.
Very nice. So let's enjoy them as background sound effects.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So your cultural analysis is that there are agencies and programs pushing all of us, including those little children, into service of much larger, darker agendas that have to do with splitting off families and individuals into, I guess you could call us sort of pods, individual stations, into which we receive all kinds of propaganda and retooling.
Yeah, we're sort of energy units that can be siphoned off by the handlers, the parasites who can tax us and exploit us and pick our brains and use whatever functions that they find useful or that can be commodified, whatever it might be. Yeah. So, but only within certain, within certain boundaries, and that's why those children outside here are going to be exposed to Common Core and vaccines and all the other elements there.
So how do your students respond to the kind of content that you teach?
Well, it ranges from panic to utter skepticism. The skeptics are beginning to fall by the wayside as conditions degenerate, and I always, in giving this information, I always embed it in some sort of compelling personal or human story, and they can immediately identify with what's going on in their lives and their families, and some of them are saying, oh my gosh, I have to save baby sister from taking the HPV vaccines. I don't want her to wind up like those people on YouTube. And I said, yeah, your parents are refugees. They can hardly speak English. You're the one who's going to have to wear the big boy pants and educate them and warn them that the public health agent, who's probably of the same ethnicity as them and speaks their native language, the MD in the white coat, are not their friends. And that the MD themselves probably didn't know what's going on. You're going to have to be the person to do it. And that also makes them grow up and mature better, and so they're not just going to be wasting their time doing, goldfish swallowing or whatever they do these days. Oh, texting. I think that's the new goldfish swallowing.
So you're actually teaching mainly Asian Americans. Are those the people who enroll for these courses, or are you teaching the general student body?
From one of the campuses at UC Davis and Berkeley, it's around 40% Asian American already. It's way huge, way out of, I think, nationally the Asian American population is only like 4 or 5%. And within that subset, I guess, yeah, the majority would be Asian American. But again, the way Asian American studies as a profession, as a discipline, has been set up, it's been institutionalized, and I would say perverted. That's why I came up with this new book. It's been hijacked, it's been weaponized, it's been set up to pacify this majority of students, to get them to talk about how bad they should feel, and about racism and discrimination and interracial dating. I want to, you know, my dad doesn't want me to stay out past 10 o'clock, but my brothers can drive their souped-up Hondas till midnight. You know, that type of stuff. Really, really, really low level. Oh, or media stereotype. Oh, yeah, you know, that guy, Dr. Ken Jeong on Hangover 1 and 2, isn't he an incredible racist? I said, man, you know, that's been going on for decades, and that's not going to change the world. Why don't you make your own movie featuring strong Asian American men, strong Asian American women, together, separately, whatever. Said, I'm not going to pander to your low, and bottom really hate that, because they come in with such low expectations. By the way, most of my colleagues are still at that level because they know they can get away with it. Does that make any sense to you?
Yes.
It's sort of touchy-feely. It's just, you know, which has no place in a university. It's like this is what's happened, Sophia. I mean, literally. We have become, our department, our academic department, has become an extension of the therapy, the mental health department within our school. In fact, in my department, it's called the Department of Asian American Studies. We are a bona fide academic department. But right on Faculty Row, just a few doors down from me, is a therapist. We have our own therapist. So what they're telling my students is that you are sick, you're unhealthy, you have pathology, come to our office. This is part of the total education process. And as you probably know, the whole mental health complex itself needs to be given a very, very close look. I'm sorry if I'm offending any people who are MFCC types or whoever else, but that too has been hijacked by the state in order to pacify people. So I said, I'm sorry, that's not what I'm here for. I also made a big stink about them putting these therapists, these psychotherapists in our academic building. I was penalized for that. Recently I was denied a merit and promotion by a guy who's a kingpin of so-called Asian American mental health. He gets millions of dollars of grants, public funding from the National Institute of Mental Illness. They call it the National Institute of Mental Health. And these people want to squash me. The university says, no, we want these people weak. We want you vulnerable. We want you in our database. We're going to give you Prozac. We're going to give you the SSRIs. We're going to give you the HPVs. That's our mandate. So this is what I teach in the sexuality class. That's pretty intense.
Yeah, no, it's very amazing. I guess that, you know, one of the things you had mentioned that you had seen my Sandy Hook presentation, and one of the core elements of that is that they're going to expand the mental health screenings and assessments. And it all started, it may have started even before that, but you remember when we had all the political correctness in the 80s?
Certainly.
And the real pressure was starting to come down on people who said things that were untoward or just made gaffes of one kind or another. Mm-hmm. And it has really expanded since then. And I can see this. I can see these people, these students of yours who are struggling to become successful. They have family pressure. They're going to college maybe for the first time. Mm-hmm. And instead of receiving a real education, they're getting this, what you call extended therapy and social conditioning.
And SSRIs.
They're actually being given drugs?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I don't have a hard and fast number. I would like to sue for them to get this information publicly. But I would say about 75% of my students have been or currently are on selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, especially the women.
And
the guys are given ADD type.
This is determined by this therapy office?
Oh, yeah. They're right in our office. They're 2 doors down from them. They're right down there. And this guy told me, I asked him, the guy that heads it, he's part of, they call it community health services. So, audience, ladies and gentlemen, if you hear anything with the prefix community on it, that's a red flag right there. Anyway, it's community health services. And I asked him, I challenged him. He said, no, we can't guarantee any privacy on this. And when he first came on board, I was suspicious of him. And he said, oh, no, we're not, I don't subscribe to the medical model at all. This is just so that students come in and talk. And this is before, by the way, that they snuck this therapist into our floor. It's been an incremental process where we've been colonized. And this guy lied straight to my face. After he was appointed the head chief, he's Asian American, of course. This way they can't say, well, it's psycho-racism. So he's Asian American. That's the strategy right now. Black people have people for the black community, Native American. There are Latinas who do that for the Latinas at UC Davis and elsewhere. And he lied straight-faced to me. He said, yeah, we can't guarantee your privacy. We're going to do this. And so that's the big battle right now. I'm contacting a very prominent international stature lawyer down in Santa Cruz, California, who is high profile, and we're going to challenge what I call menticide at the University of California system. That's what's going on. Menticide as in homicide, as in genocide. And this is also part of the larger eugenics strategy. It's happening slowly, incrementally, and parents are unaware of it. And by the way, like I said, most of my students are immigrant, refugee children. Their families are not on psychotropics. They have their own forms of healing, shamanistic, whatever, spiritualistic. This is all new to them. And one of the strategies that has come up is to try to get these students to buy into the notion that psychotherapy and drugs are science and they're modern and they're American. And this is what you have to submit to if you want to be a true modern American living in the 21st century. And it's a battle, and that's what Asian American Studies has become. It's been a way to normalize and to facilitate this hijacking process to a group that's very, very substantial. It's 40% of the UC system, and nationally it's also huge. All of it, and these are the people who are going to be the professors. They're going to be the medical doctors. It's a huge demographic. So that's on one end. The other end are the large numbers of illegal aliens from the Latin American countries who are the new welfare class. The people I'm teaching are the new professional class.
Okay, so I have to ask you, if Asians are the professional class incoming,
yes,
Latinos are the what did you call them? Welfare class.
The welfare enforcement class, yes.
So what are the Indians? I don't mean American, I mean from India, because let me just...
Oh, they're part of the Asian American professional class.
Okay, yeah, so as South Asians, they're...
Yeah, South Asians.
Yeah, because I had a friend who was doing some filming in Northern California, and he went to Oracle Corporation.
It's full of South Asians.
My God, he said at 5 o'clock the doors open and everybody who comes out is brown-skinned from India.
By the way, they're not aware of it, but they're already on the road to being replaced and outsourced. Guess where? To India. I'm already seeing signs of fraying in San Jose, Silicon Valley, where Oracle is based.
Really?
Yeah, they're going to offshore this, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Google has a barge in San Francisco Bay that they're going to fill with employees from offshore, literally offshore in California waters, who are going to undercut these people. So I'm telling my students, hey, listen, you're being chumped, you're being played. You need to make provisions right now because they're moving you into a future that's already in the process of being dismantled. And I said, the good news is that a lot of you are from families that have small businesses, right? You have restaurants, you have nail salons, you have dry cleaners, you have small software operations. I said, instead of looking towards joining Oracle or one of these firms in Silicon Valley or Route 128, why don't you look towards your family businesses as a model, because that's really where the growth is going to be. And they don't want to hear that because that's what they want. They're being taught to escape from.
Right, because they're being taught by their parents to keep climbing, and that's so pedestrian to want to keep maintaining a dry cleaning business.
Right, but you know what? It's a necessity, and you can't offshore dry cleaning, at least not yet that I know of. And you can prosper. Yeah, but no, I want a job with Oracle. I want to clean. I want to go to work for Kaiser Permanente, and they find out that being a medical doctor is really, really bad work. I haven't met a single medical doctor who enjoys what he or she is doing.
No, I know that.
And they envy me of all people. I said, well, if I only told you what I have to go through, you glamorize my particular profession. It's degenerated. I said, for one thing, only 25% of us are full-time. They've just decimated our ranks. And all these really supposedly intelligent PhD-type people are living in utter denial. They don't even want to see it happening. These are my colleagues I'm talking about.
Right. So you've now spent some time giving us rather a bleak breakdown of what's going on. And how can you put a positive spin on this, if it's possible? I mean, you can go spiritual on me, you can go positive, whatever you want. I just want to hear if there's any flip side.
Absolutely. There is. Human beings are infinitely creative. We haven't survived as a species for so long by just sitting back passively and allowing tyrannies to run roughshod over us. Everybody, each group, has its boiling point. You know, it's really a question of how far the middle class is willing to be sodomized before we start saying, hey, no, yeah, that's enough. We understand what you're up to. We're taking the republic back. And I'm trying to hasten that process by educating young people. I have great hopes for the young generation. If I didn't, I would have resigned my position at the University of California a long time ago. I see such initiative, such brightness, and the fact that they can be so receptive and so disingenuous and be filled with such great expectations, to me is heartening. I mean, I like that. But conversely, it also hurts me when I see them being led to a dismal future where they cannot exercise all this great energy and curiosity that they have native to them, that inheres in them as human beings. So that's my double challenge, to give them the truth, unvarnished and as ugly as it may be, but also to say, hey, listen, the situation is so out of whack that makes opportunities for you and me. I mean, if you want to go into the medical field and become a medical doctor, you could probably do a practice just on detoxification of the population. You'll have people just lined up left and right. And then you could hook up with some Asian American attorney or any attorney, someone there who sets up their a system outside of the Obamacare. There's all kinds of creative means of I guess workaround is the term that you might use. So yeah, I don't really want to paint such a picture of despair, because that's not who I am. I mean, I would have given up a long time ago.
Well, I think you like a challenge. You said double challenge just a few minutes ago. But that's who you are. I can hear that. That you really like a challenge, and you're going to stay in there, and you're going to see how much, not influence or prodding or bait. I'm looking for another word. How much?
I'm an educator.
You're an educator. You're seeding. How much you can seed these people,
Yeah, and it's not going to be GMOs either.
Right. So tell us about your book, please.
Yes. Have you gotten your copy yet?
No, but I have to go to the P.O. box system.
Okay, because I sent you your own personal copy.
That's very kind of you. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, of course. And thank you for your material. I mean, I'll have to watch it like several times, because you have so much going on in there. By the way, very quickly, before I answer your question, did you come up with that 5-dimensional methodology yourself, or was that drawn from somebody? Or?
No, that was me. That was many years ago. I was lying in bed one night, and I just figured it all out, literally in just a few minutes. And then I had to turn on the light and write it all down, and it's been one of my sort of the parts of my core ever since.
Do you have a background in physics or the sciences, or?
Nope.
You just came, okay, because that not only does that make your presentation hold together, but as a methodology, sort of as a proof, as hypothesis testing, it's very, very effective.
Well, thank you.
I'm going to write it down and try to reach to the 5 dimensions. I've been only going to 3 dimensions. I thought getting to the 3rd dimension, that I could pat myself in the back, but now I have 2 more to go. Anyway.
There's 6 and 7 as well, and
you didn't get to that.
No, I did lightly mention 6 in the conclusion, but yeah, I'll explain that to you sometime. But then after that, it just gets too hard for me.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the last ends of it is transcendence, in the positive sense, not in the Johnny Depp post-humanist sense.
Right, right. Okay, so your book, what's it called?
A book. It's called Servitors of Empire. It's published with Trying Day Books up in Walterville, Oregon. It's close to the campus of the University of Oregon. Published by an incredible individual, Chris Milligan. Just came out about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And what I'm doing here is just really questioning this sort of racial oppression theory that's been plaguing ethnic studies, Asian American studies, African American, for the last 30, 40 years, especially in the case of Asian Americans. I mean, this is not me saying this, but this is research reports and census data, but Asian Americans have a higher level of family income than any other group, white included. Less of really high levels of education, especially South Asian people in particular, really stick out. Home ownership, you name it. By all the categories, we're doing fine. Okay, that's the good part. The downside of it is that we're also being set up, Asian Americans, for expropriation. Right? And I know that because we're being flattered by official government sources. And but that's just a means for a bust out. They want accumulators, bioaccumulators, wealth accumulators, all in one place, build them up, and then there will be some sort of plot. I haven't figured that out yet, of how to dispossess people. This is what happened to the African-American middle class. They were being brought up through the 50s and 60s, and to some extent now, and then they were collapsed. This happened to various Asian American groups through history. My own group, Japanese Americans, they were accumulating a lot of wealth up into the 20s and 30s. And then they had the World War II exercise in PSYOPs and property expropriation. This is part of the Rockefeller-Rothschild. I'm using the German pronunciation, the Rothschild modus operandi. I mean, that's their formula. So just look out for that. But that is a warning that people who are on the rise, who are in high cotton, so to speak, don't want to hear. They said, "Oh yeah, this is going to go on forever. I'm doing well. Hey, I could have been back in the People's Republic of China, not doing well." And I said, "Well, listen, this is the history. Check it out." Also, part of the book is the use of intellectual labor. We've talked about South Asians and Chinese and Taiwanese labor, and a couple of the recent Nobel laureates have been Japanese American biologists and research scientists. Physicists and so forth. But people like Elaine Chao, as Lou Dobbs called her, the Secretary of Cheap Labor. She was labor. And by the way, she comes from a high-level Chi-Com family. She's very well-connected politically. And within Asian America, she's seen as like a quote-unquote role model. That's a phrase that makes me, rich. And she's given a pass. Then you have Norman Yoshio Mineta, who was the Secretary of Transportation when 9/11 went down. I have a whole chapter on him. I want to find out who the real Norman Yoshio Mineta is. I talk about such weasels as John Chun, Torture Memos U. And you notice I use their 3 names, right? Like John Chun Yu, Norman Yoshio Mineta. That's purposely done because all killers are known publicly by all 3 names.
Yeah, that's CIA style.
Yeah, like
Lee Harvey Oswald.
Exactly, you got it. There you go. So I'm following suit, and you picked up on it. But I hope your readers will get some. There's little tidbits like that, and running through the book.
What about Sun Myung Moon?
Well, he was like a lot of these glitter black bug churches. I won't name them. I do watch them because I like to watch how these guys communicate and try to observe their teaching method. Moon was a CIA and Korean CIA construct, and he was also financed by the Japanese post-war right wing, which is also a CIA creation. The CIA this is revealed in a New York Times article a number of years ago. I think it was by Tim Weiner, saying that the CIA was funding the Liberal Democratic Party for almost every year since the end of World War II. Those are all hand-picked candidates. So, so they picked this guy here as as a force in moral rearmament. He was close to the whole Georgetown set. And later, of course, he bought the Washington Times. He owns, he meaning the Moon Organization, he owns, I don't know, scores of different related front businesses. And the religions, as well as the university, the media systems, these are the military, all these institutions have to be looked at very closely to find the hidden agendas and the true ownership patterns of them. And my argument, as we've been talking in our conversation today, is that how come of all these institutions, the universities have been given a pass? Mostly we just talk about, oh yeah, there's Skull and Bones, okay, that's Yale, that's pretty well known. What about the University of California today? Now, Baroness what's her name, Filipina de Rothschild? She died recently in Paris. She's the wine maven, right? Well, she's in cahoots with this local family called the Mondavi. They have an occult winery right here in Napa County, which had the earththquake recently. I think it's in Napa. It's Sonoma. It's up there someplace.
Robert Mondavi.
It's Robert Mondavi. Okay, they're in cahoots. He's dead now. But guess who one of the major investors at the University of California, Davis, which, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, is the premier agricultural research institution in the world, not just in the UC system, but in the world. Okay, this is, I'm teaching, like I said, in the belly of the beast. The administration does not like that. In fact, I've taken my students through the Robert and I forgot the name of his wife. They have a food research science. They have a entertainment complex there. So the Rothschild are very much part of the UC Davis occultic experience. And I'm teaching this to my students, and then they go running, because students now are being taught to rat out their professors on every little thing. They go running to the administration, and the director of the program takes notes, and he denies me raises, and they harass me. They send them to the vice provost A, B, and C. They interview me in windowless rooms. I don't know when the torture starts kicking in, but that might happen soon. Because I've revealed the complete underpinnings of this, and this is what you really need to do if you want a thorough analysis of the education system, and that's really how Asian American studies started out in the first place.
Okay,
we were excluded. Our history was excluded. The understanding of our contributions to American civilization. We came to university on that basis, but now, 40 years later, we are now the Servitors of Empire. We are part of the problem, I hate to admit.
Right, because you've been engineered into that without your knowledge. So Servitors of Empire really has to do with, I was going to say, who's the audience for your book, but you've explained it. Anyone who's interested in this.
It's a general audience. It's not written with a lot of theoretical jargon, and I say that because jargon and quote-unquote theory is the coin of the realm in academia. The less comprehensible it is to non-specialists, the higher regard it is given and the greater rewards it is showered with. But in a larger sense, all the different major groups have their servitors. They're in the Latina community. They're in the African American community. The ultimate example of that is Barack Hussein Obama, a.k.a. Barry Soetoro, who I claim, by the way, is the first Asian Pacific American president, not the first African American president, but first Asian Pacific American president. So maybe that will make Professor Cornel West feel better, because he feels so betrayed that his man, Barama, didn't live up to his promises. I never thought he would live up to his promises. I was never fooled by that. Cornel West is at Princeton University, the elite Ivy League school, and he's sort of a Christian Marxist, cultural nationalist type spokesperson, and it can be applied to their communities as well. This is what I call multicultural, multiracial fascism.
And is it Marxism also?
It's part of it, but it all comes together. Corporatism, Marxism, Sovietism, collectivism, oligarchic corporatism. It just needs centralized, concentrated power in the hands of the technocratic few. And since 1965, with the immigration 1965, they brought in lots and lots of Asian immigrant intellectual labor from India, from China, from Taiwan, to come in to man the livers of the technocracy. And once that's in place, once it's all offloaded into the singularity supercomputers, these people are going to be flushed down the toilet. It's already happening.
You know, I was with a lawyer friend of mine today, and he said he has some program, and all he has to do is take out his little dictation machine, and he can dictate all his briefs, and the software types it all up. So that's the end of the secretary right there.
The legal secretary, the legal researcher, yes.
Yeah.
That's expert systems.
It's so, you know, as I pondered that on my way home, and I was thinking, wow, where is everybody going to go? I mean, and yes, I guess this fits with the general decline in the resilience of the population. Some call it depopulation or population control, and I always emphasize to my listeners or readers that population control actually translates into many things. It's not about reducing numbers only. It's about concentrating population, dislocating population. Mm-hmm. It's about many things, manipulating populations, plural. Mm-hmm. So yeah, if I guess they're going to robotize the society and provide machine replacements and substitutes for what we had people do at one time. And now I've learned that they were making robots look more human with eyes and hands and programs that say, excuse me, I'm lost. Can you tell me where to go? Because there are robots who wander down halls. And I've read that in hospitals they have robots that come to your bedside, and the thing has a television screen for a face, and your physician looks out at you from the screen and asks you how you're doing. And patients, according to the circular that I was reading from a very big new hospital around here, patients love this. They love having their physician visit them from a robot's television type face, which I find hard to believe.
Well, there's been about 20 or 30 years of anime coming out of Japan, and that's not an accident. This is all predictive programming to create the family-friendly robot presence, starting out with Giant Robo and Atom Boy, Tetsuya Otomo, and they made them look nice and cuddly and approachable to get us into this mode. So you have a new generation who view this type of robotic companion quite positively. And the major research centers for that seems to be, coincidentally, Japan, right? So they have the popular culture as part of particular programming, and they also have the technology. Germany is also far advanced. And in the United States itself, in our movies, we're seeing some predictive programming. I can't remember the titles of the films. I've been watching them so with great frequency lately. One of them has to do with this. I think came out last year. Of this one guy who falls in love with his computer. I can't remember. I think it's one of the Phoenix brothers, and it's a very spooky movie. It's also pretty boring. And then there's one with starring Frank Langella, who's an old superannuated person. His own family doesn't want to deal with him, so they bring him a robot to take care of him. And he winds up falling in love with it as well in his own way. So we're seeing we'll probably see more movies like this, like Avatar, like Transcendence, to get us used to the idea. It will only take one generation to get us in complete acceptance, or what I would consider to be compliance to this new robotic AI regime. Just one generation, that's all it takes. I mean, I have students, like I told you, whose parents went through the Cambodian genocide, who are one generation away from 2 million of their compatriots being murdered in the Vietnam War. One generation later, and really all they care about 20 years ago is wearing the big baggy pants. 20 years later, now all they care about is the skinny jeans or their dumb bone, right? And they just want to do hip-hop and whatever's cool at the moment. So one generation of you have a degeneration. And I'm sorry if it sounds negative there, but I do my best to say, listen, let's take a really close look at Agent Orange and Dow, and how that relates to Monsanto and GMOs today in 2014. And hey, what's going over there in the food science department over here at the University of California, Davis? And who really are the Mondavis? By the way, have you heard of the House of Rothschild? It just goes on and on. Now, on that level, students start responding to it because it's quite dramatic. It's just that they have never really understood this as being more than entertainment, right? They just thought this was Dan Brown. They just thought this was Harry Pothead type of entertainment. They just thought it was some sort of movie. I said, no. These movies are based on the history. These movies are based on the actual sociology. You have a cause and effect arrows in the wrong direction. Fortunately, I have students smart enough, most of them can see that now. All they have to do is point it out to them, and they're off to the races.
Right. Well, most fiction is rooted in real life because that's what makes you able to relate to it, right?
Exactly.
So the predictive programming, the coming attractions, as you called it earlier, that's the best way to work the mind, to get people to disbelieve in it by treating them to something that they think is utterly and entirely fictitious and would never happen.
Right. Entertainment.
Yeah.
It's a spectacle. Once you get them in the entertainment spectacle mode, then reality is that much more difficult to get across to them. So that's what Hollywood's for. But, we're talking on this podcast here, and independent media and alternative media is cropping up all over the place. That's the good news about it. And networks and cable, they're going crazy because their viewerships are dropping like flies. They're just trying to figure out how to get rid of these independent media outlets, independent scholars, independent researchers. It's driving them nuts. That's the good news.
Well, I liken the podcast to the push cart.
The push cart press?
No. Vendors who had push carts who went through a little town and really didn't have broad reach. I don't expect that I have huge numbers of listeners because I just started this. But I increasingly get feedback that, what I've talked about with my guests is very exceptional and unusual. So I expect that the search for this kind of content will be growing and growing and growing. But right now it's the push cart. I hope you don't mind that you're only riding a little push cart with me.
That's okay.
That's right? Exactly.
I'm glad to have any type of forum to tell you the truth. And I'll tell you something. I'm not in the business of making predictions, but I think 12 months from now, you're going to have listeners all over the world. Anybody with an internet connection, this is where the pushcart analogy breaks down, has the potential to access your podcast, correct?
That's right. And I have a specific kind of listener. I don't have, because I am sort of specialized and I go into, it's more free form and anyway, whatever. I'm happy. I'm very happy doing it this way. I was with a couple of networks earlier, and there was too much. It was too rigid. And this is much, much more to my liking. And then, of course, the MP3s are downloadable. People can put them into their little players, and as they can with radio shows. But I'll tell you something. I'm studying hypnotism now and trance, and I'm writing a newsletter on it. I do my famous little newsletters, but I am learning so much just in the last 3 days. It's been mind-blowing, and I have come up with another sort of, like I did with the Sandy Hook, 2, 3, 4, and 5 dimensions. I've just found out something about how the brain works that I didn't know before. Maybe other people know it, but anyway, I will eventually post this newsletter. Maybe I'll tell you, and we'll do a show, because you probably have lots of insights. You're the kind of guest that I want to have on a lot, because you can go into all kinds of nooks and crannies and produce things that I haven't considered,
Well, that's the beauty of this type of communication, and this is why AI will never fully take over. because the human mind is infinite in its capacity to learn, relearn, and to generate new knowledge and new insights. I might be a little bit arrogant, but I don't think the most sophisticated machine will ever be able to do that. And we also have, this is part of the infinite capacity of language and communication that's unique to our species.
Well, we're very elastic, but we are also creatures who imagine, and I think it's that imagination that is forward-looking and that is really creative. That's the very creative part of us. Mm-hmm. And I am just now exploring something. I don't feel confident enough to talk about it on this show, but I think it's in us to reimagine this world. Let me just say that. And it's not just going to be some airy-fairy New Age thing, but we just have to proceed somewhat differently than we have been. And then I think it will work, but I won't be the only one.
It's I'm not exactly sure what you've come across so far, but it sounds like something that should be going into the elementary school curriculum instead of Common Core.
Okay, you mentioned that.
We're going to have to really struggle to get that type of creativity back into our schooling. And it's done purposely to weed it out of our human endowment so that we can't fight back any longer. So that's going to be a big struggle. I'm sorry?
Well, I have a friend who was in an administrative position in education. It wasn't a low position. And we were corresponding by email about Common Core. And yesterday it finally hit me how she sees Common Core. I thought she was brainwashed, but she isn't. The way they've trained the administrators is to blame the teachers. They are putting the teachers at fault. The teachers are not teaching effectively. Therefore, a more stringent, not curriculum so much, but set of standards is needed. And this is what Common Core is going to provide.
Sure. They use this term metrics these days. There have to be these metrics in place so we can measure your effectiveness.
Right. But the fault, when it hit me yesterday, I said, oh my God. Mm-hmm. She sees the fault of the teachers as bigger than the program's shortcomings. She can't see the shortcomings in the program because she's trained to see the to place the shortcomings on the teachers.
She probably has a doctorate in education, EDD from UCLA or Berkeley.
PhD.
By the way, or a PhD. Harvard only gives the EDD for historical reasons. But you mentioned this. Schools of education are really the areas that need to come under criticism. The other ones are schools of social work. Those are the two major areas, especially schools of education. This is where all this garbage is coming from. Now, having said that, I've also seen some documentaries that are critical of Common Core that feature professors who are in schools of education. But so far, politically, Common Core is winning the political battle. The one that you're talking to, your friend of yours, she's drank the Kool-Aid. She's an administrator. She went through a doctoral program that inculcated these values into her. And she's also getting paid at a much higher level than your average classroom teacher. She's probably hadn't seen the inside of a classroom for years and years. She probably didn't understand the realities of what teaching is like these days. These are techniques that the big boys use in order to have these low-level managers like school principals ride herd on their teachers. This is what goes on at UC. I have these deans and these provosts who go to Delphi Technique, quote-unquote, leadership seminars. They're given their marching orders, and they're told that they have to silence Hamamoto or somebody. It's a common strategy.
Excuse me, schools of education, those are higher learning, like the ones that hand out the EDDs?
Exactly, or in the case of your friend, PhDs. They train administrators. They do all the research for Common Core. They get massive grants from mostly, I guess, private foundations like the Gates Foundation. Bill and Melinda Gates give tons and tons of money to schools of education. Some of these are sort of small scale, some of them are large scale macroscopic type of agendas that are there, but that's where it's coming from. Now, if you want an institutional locus where all this nonsense comes from, School of Education, that's where you need to look.
And when did it start to turn, or was it always kind of turned?
It's been there since the Rockefellers and the Carnegies got their hands on it, which is probably turn of the century, early 20th century. Like I said, turn over a rock and you will find a Rockefeller.
I heard that it was Rockefeller originally.
Could be. You never know. It could be, Rock of Satan, for all I know.
All right. Well, we're hitting our 19-minute...
We've been talking for that long?
Yeah.
I don't want to stop.
Well, that's what happens when you have fun. You have free reign. You can say anything you want.
I'm going to get on eHarmony as soon as I get off the program here. I want to sign up for it.
Well, they'll choose for you.
Great. That's what I need.
Right.
Can they also wash my dishes and drive me around town in my automated car?
And they do windows.
Great. Maybe they can just live my life for me in general, like transcendence.
They'll teach for you.
Good. I'm
lie in
glad.
bed all day.
Great. I'll just plug right into the socket.
And watch television.
I'll just download it. I won't have to watch.
That's right. Well, All right. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for this talk. And I want everyone to know the book is Servitors, Servitors of Empire by Trine Day, Trineday, Publishing. And where do you buy this book, please?
This is available on Amazon, according to my friends who have already seen it there. Or you can go through Trine Day.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll even have it in my tiny little store.
Hey, that would be wonderful. There's something in it for everybody. A lot of intrigue, a lot of mystery, a lot of really dark themes. But the last I even have a chapter, by the way, on John Lennon and Yoko Ono. That's
she's Asian. Hey.
She's Asian American, and guess what? She was the brains of the operation,
really?
Not John Lennon.
Wow. All behind those dark sunglasses.
Exactly. Yeah, she was a great business person, too.
All right. Well, I can't wait to read the book. I hope I read it the way I read the Dave McGowan book, which was to wish that it was endless and I could read it every night. So,
thank you.
Well, I don't. No. I'm saying I wish. I haven't read it yet.
Okay. Well, hopefully it meets your expectations, because I'll be writing more.
Yeah, well, if it's anything like you, then that's what I want, right?
If I can hang on to my job, you can look forward to more volumes of weird writing.
No, you can do that without your job. We'll find a way for you.
I need to eat somehow. If there are any people who run foundations, please let me know. I'll apply for a major grant from your institution.
Well, there's such a thing as a breatharian.
A breatharian? You mean just living off of inhaling?
That's right. You don't need to eat. You know, you have to break every paradigm that is holding you prisoner. So don't say things like, I need to eat. Just say, I want to write more and more books. This is how you don't limit yourself. I need to eat is a limitation.
Yeah. I'll have to ponder that one.
I'll be your therapist.
All right. I'm going to have a really nice dinner tonight. I'm getting hungry. That's why food is on my mind.
Yeah.
I have some wild salmon that I bought today. So I'm looking forward to broiling that. All
right. Well, we're ending this little podcast, but I can assure you, if I keep doing podcasts, Professor Darrell Hamamoto is going to be on them.
Great.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for this experience, and I have gotten a lot out of it. I've scribbled tons of notes, and I think that people will definitely read your book. I'll read it first, and then I will push it as hard as I can.
You're welcome, Sophia, and I'd like to thank you for the great work that you've been doing, not just on this podcast, but your investigative reporting and your documentary filmmaking has been brilliant. And this gives me a great, great deal of hope. We are not alone. We are not isolated. All you have to do is just look up and it's there.
All right. Well, good night, and
Good night.
we'll speak again.
All right. Good night now.